Jason Spiess for our awesome weekly live chats of intrigue, wonder, and oil field news. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. It's just been a busy day today. We've got all kinds of things happening here. We're going to be introducing a new program in a couple of weeks, so we're working on that. And we're on double time here because, quite honestly, so many people are on social media, so many people are on the radio, so many people are listening to different forms of content that we're just putting it out there nonstop. As many people that want to jump on the platform and interview, basically we're like, yeah, if you're still in business, come on. This is, kind of what we're here for. We're public service at this point. So it's been an interesting week, to say the least. We had one gentleman come on from Swan Energy, Brandon Davis, the CEO, and they're buying natural gas leases. He came on, he said, hey, we want 500 more wells. We want 40,000 acres. We're buying. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm sure people want to hear that. So it's been an interesting, week with all the different doom and gloom, if you will, happening out in the oil patch and out in the economy, if you will. There's some bright spots, and that's the part I think that people forget, me included, that when you pump $1 trillion into an economy like they just did in the last week and a half, there's $1 trillion in the economy. So there's a bunch of money out there, and that Snickers isn't going to go up in price for a few months. So go get it while you can. And it's been fun to kind of find some of those people out there that are going out there and finding the business and being aggressive and saying, you know what, we have a plan. Even when the government doesn't have a plan, we have a plan. Even when states don't have a plan, we have a plan. So to me, that's inspiring. It's encouraging. I don't look at it as reckless, I guess. Not with the calculated risks some of these people are taking. We did talk to one gentleman in the Bakken up in North Dakota way, and his name is Tom Massero, Great American Mining. Now, are you familiar with any of these terms at this point?
No, not really.
Okay,
so you can just pretend that I'm ignorant. Yeah.
You're like, okay, the Bakken. I know where the Bakken is. All right.
Yeah, I know that. I got that.
So, Great American Mining is actually more of a technical company than they are an oil and gas company. What they do is they mine Bitcoin. Are you familiar with Bitcoin?
Oh, yeah.
The word?
Yeah. I'm generally familiar. I didn't personally familiarize myself with it because I don't really trust the system, to be perfectly honest. But I have family members that lost a lot of money by trying to do that Bitcoin thing.
Well, Bitcoin is different because it's a new form of currency essentially, and it takes out middlemen. And there's some pros and cons with anything. But what's interesting about it is China is now creating a blockchain that. Now, okay, let me back up here. Blockchain is used to run Bitcoin, okay? Blockchain is like the seed, if you will. And then Bitcoin would be what sprouts off of it, that sort of thing. Or for maybe some technical people, the local area network or the LAN network on your computer runs the internet. Same thing. Blockchain runs Bitcoin, runs all these other cryptocurrencies. So what China's doing right now is they're putting together a blockchain backed by oil and gas. So in the way that I used to kind of casually say, that a decade ago, me and this really smart economics guy, just kind of after a couple bourbons, he said, he goes, it's the money is kind of backed by the military that can protect the oil reserves. And, when 92%, 96% of our daily lives takes petroleum products, it makes sense because, we need that to move around, the economy moving, everything along those lines. Money's not backed by gold anymore. So it made a lot of sense to me. And so now when you take a look at what China's doing, if they're going to seriously start integrating into a blockchain type of a format backed by oil and gas, that's going to change the world. That is going to change the world, and you heard it right here. And folks, I know it's way over your head. I understand this is way over your head, but it's true. And this is something that is coming. And the only way I can try to explain it to people is if you look at cash, okay, cash is a physical item that you hold in your hand. And when you give it to somebody, you are essentially transferring energy back and forth. So the gentleman, who that goes and does the chickens and eggs and goes and trades it for the goat farmer with the cheese, they're exchanging really their energy. Have I lost you yet? Are you
Nope.
Okay, so
That makes sense.
yeah, and so what money did, cash did, is it just became a promissory note. I think it actually says promissory note still on cash. I haven't looked in a long time, but at one point it did. So essentially what you're doing is this exchange of debt, and it's an exchange of debt of energy. So when you think about what we're going to transform into in the next wave of Visa, MasterCard, and now they got things where you can get paid like 3 days before your paycheck, that's blockchain. That's how you look at blockchain, where if it takes 3 days to get a Visa, MasterCard approval on some money, and it takes 1 day for your automatic paycheck to go, well, what the heck is going on that says I got to sign up for something where I can get my paycheck 3 days before my paycheck comes? That's blockchain. So that's where we're going, is that, and now I'm not being as a matter of fact about it. I'm just trying to lay out a very simplistic form to follow with kind of the direction we're going with things. So, when you think of, like, say, receivables, a lot of people take 30 days. Some people take 90 days. Heck, some people, in my case, take 120 days, right? So that goes away. With a Bitcoin and a blockchain technology, that goes away. And it's an instantaneous thing. So the only reason I bring it up is not to say we're living in science fiction. We're living in science fact, and it's happening right now in China. And they're integrated in with the oil and gas industry. And when you think about how much power and how much, I guess, influence the oil and gas industry has on just everything, agriculture, you need a lot of oil and gas to make agriculture work, whether it's from the diesel in the trucks or the polymers that go over the seeds or the Roundup Ready that you need to spray the fields. There's a lot of different petroleum products that go into agriculture. And this is interesting. So anyway, Tom Massaro, what they're doing is they've got this big, giant, like, kind of machine out there that's capturing natural gas, and they're turning it into Bitcoin.
Huh.
Yeah, exactly.
Odd.
So wrap your head around that, folks. So instead of, North Dakota just came out and they're flaring at 19%. They're supposed to be less than 10%. And they're flaring at 19%. So there's a big issue in North Dakota with the flaring. And this is a solution. Now, it's not the one-all, the be-all. We've said for years that you need a variety of these smart, clever capitalists that are crazy enough to go sleep at well sites and check monitor levels on butane, bethane, pentane, all kinds of different panes and tanes to make sure the flaring emissions are down. And I don't know, the investment just hasn't been there. And they've gone more towards, I guess, a centralization and talking about pipelines and infrastructure and state universities and that sort of thing, instead of going with a lot of these independents, a lot of these smaller companies that are actually creating real solutions. In the meantime, while they're trying to focus their energy on the future, they're flaring 19%, not hitting the state regulations. So I'm not sure if that's going to have any impact on the energy companies or not, because generally they don't do much. I don't even know if they fine them too much on that, but that's a different topic for a different day. And one that I don't tend to get into too much. So anyway, where have I lost you yet with some of my crazy talk today?
No, I have a lot of thoughts running through my brain that we do not have enough time to cover. But yeah, I'll definitely be mulling over that information. I'm going to reserve my thoughts, I suppose, until after I've looked at more information, because I just don't know how I feel about stuff moving to Bitcoin. Generally I have a problem with the instant gratification society that we've already created, and I don't necessarily think that exchanging currency being even more instantaneous is going to resolve anything. That exchange of energy, it makes sense.
Well, I mean, if you go back to the, Professor Spiess time here, and this is, in the land of make-believe or the land of truth, we'll find out. But the way that I was taught about banks and currency and money was that it was started back in Egypt, as far as what we're using today, the current format of money, the current flow, if you will. and it was by a god Isis. And if you take the word Isis and put it together, it's a dollar sign with two eyes. And that's where the dollar sign came from, was the god Isis. It was in charge of money, basically. And so it's very ironic that that's the name of this terrorist group now, okay? That's not lost on me for some reason. But when you take a look at what the money was supposed to do, like I said, it was a way to basically sum up and create a very efficient way of bartering, because the goat farmer argued that his cheese was harder to produce than the chicken farmer's eggs. And you know what? He's probably right. So that's where the marketplace came from. Well, in order to have a marketplace, you needed currency. And like energy, you needed a flow. And so that's where the banks were introduced, because the banks, like in a river, control the flow of currency. So when you look at what happened with the government recently, where they gave all the money to the banks, and the banks decided who was worthy and who was not worthy. So just like back in the very beginning of the dawn of money, the river banks controlled the currency of the river. And that's what happened right here. The banks are now controlling the currency of our economy going forward. I mean, you want to get in the deep end with me? We can get in the deep end here, because we just did. But it's.
I wish we had time to dive further.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's kind of really how you got to think of this, is that's the way that the currency and money has worked since the dawn of civilization, going back to the Egyptian times, where the currency is going through the river, if you will, the currency, and the banks. They're what control it and mold it and move it along. So it's different when you get into the world of digital. That's a whole different conversation, and one that can become very offensive very quickly.
Potentially.
Oh no, it does. Because people realize where it's going, and they don't like it. And like I say, it depends on where their mind is and how they see this going, especially when you look at just the future of phones and what's beyond phones that we're going to have with us to open doors and do our mortgages and transfer money and even track our health. So it's I had a talk with my son last night, and I'll leave it with this because I see we're going into overtime, but we talked about a lot of things, from school to the new social rules with his friends that his friends are starting to have from their parents, and our friends' restaurants, and just a number of different things. And, what I said was, this is one of those real times in life where you either are going to conform or transform. And we just kind of left it there. And so I think I'll leave that today with you to ponder on after our very unusual conversation that we just had, that really started out to talk about, just some flaring emission management going on in the Bakken, as well as a gentleman from Swan Energy buying 40,000 acres of natural gas leases. So go to thecrudelife.com if you'd like to check out our exclusive interviews. And if you'd like to contact me, Jason at thecrudelife.com.
Well, awesome talk, and I completely agree. Conform or transform. I like that. That's a pretty good way of saying it.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Yes, have a great week.